Why was she laughing when no one else dared to breathe? The hangar was heavy with silence. Metal beams hummed faintly with the night wind. Boots scuffed. Radios clicked alive and fell dead again. Men stood shoulder to shoulder, helmets dangling at their sides, eyes hard and waiting. And yet, there she was, leaning just a little too close to the man beside her, whispering something that made the corner of his mouth twitch. A joke, small, out of place, and for a heartbeat human. But then he shifted, one sudden step forward. A ripple ran through the room, like someone had pressed pause on the air itself. Even the dust seemed to hang in mid-motion. The crowd held its breath. She froze, her smile vanished. It wasn't the kind of mistake that drew reprimands, but the kind that cracked open every hidden fear. Because in this room, this night, one wrong move wasn't just a misstep. It was a sign, a fracture in discipline, a glimpse of doubt, and doubt here killed faster than bullets. He kept walking, unbothered, as though nothing had happened. The room exhaled, but the silence stayed heavy. She pulled back into herself, jaw tight, hands clasped behind her back. No one saw the flush rise to her cheeks. No one cared. Except she did. Because it wasn't just about him, or the silence. It was about the weight she carried into this room. The invisible burden of being the one they looked at and didn't trust, not fully. The female pilot with a history too complicated to name out loud. The operative who smiled when she shouldn't, who cracked jokes at the edges of fear. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. The briefing began with clipped words and a map flickering under harsh lights. Coordinates, routes, extraction windows. A city whose name meant nothing to most in the room but everything to her. She stared at it, eyes fixed, as though willing the map to speak. The others scribbled notes. She didn't need to, she knew the streets. Not from training, not from satellite photos, but from memory, from childhood walks under burning skis, from the last day she saw her brother alive. She blinked and the memory vanished. "Lieutenant," the commander's voice cut sharp, "your vector." She stepped forward steady, laser pointer in hand. She traced the line clean, confident, no shake in her wrist, no falter in her tone. They watched, evaluated, some skeptical, some respectful. She finished, silence, a nod, they moved on. But inside her pulse hammered. Later in the barracks, the man she had whispered to earlier sat polishing his rifle. He was younger than her, too young. His hands moved with the jitter of someone hiding nerves. She dropped onto the bench beside him. "You ever fire that thing in the dark?" she asked, quiet. He shrugged, "Targets, not people." She nodded, didn't push. He glanced at her, unsure. "Why'd you joke earlier, before the brief?" She smirked faintly. "Because silence makes people forget they're alive, and dead men don't fight well." He chuckled once, surprised, then sobered. "You scared me, thought you break." She didn't answer, just tightened the laces on her boots until her fingers hurt. Night fell. Engines roared to life. The hangar doors opened wide, spilling the smell of oil and dust into the night air. She climbed into the cockpit, the familiar seat wrapping around her like an old scar. Her fingers traced the controls by habit, every switch, every lever memorized muscle. But tonight they felt heavier, like each carried not just flight but fate. The voice in her headset cracked through. "You good, Lieutenant?" She hesitated, just a second too long. Then, "Always." She was. The mission began with stillness. A city beneath them sleeping. Lights scattered like embers. Roads empty but never safe. She guided the bird low, weaving through silence, through shadows. In the back, the team sat tense, weapons across their laps, breathing through clenched teeth. One of them muttered a prayer under his breath. She heard it, held on to it. Her eyes flicked to the streets, familiar alleys, familiar corners. Somewhere down there, hidden behind years of dust and ruin, was the house she once called home. She almost turned her head, almost looked for it, but she didn't, couldn't. "Focus." She adjusted altitude, signaled, dropped them where shadows swallowed sound. They moved, ghosts in the dark. She waited, engine humming low, eyes never still. Minutes stretched, the city breathed around her, dogs barked in the distance. A door slammed somewhere. She watched the clock, every second was risk. Then static, crackling in her headset. Voices tense, clipped. A firefight, small but sharp. She gripped the controls, every nerve alive. Hold position, command ordered. Her jaw clenched. Hold. Do nothing. Even as the sounds of her team fighting bled through the headset, even as the city seemed to wake, whispers of danger growing louder. She obeyed, she always obeyed. But her heart was already down there. They emerged minutes later, fewer voices than before. She counted them without meaning to, one missing. Her hands tightened on the stick. They boarded fast, shoving wounded through the hatch. Shouts, blood, she didn't look, couldn't, because if she did, she'd see his face. The young one, the one who asked why she joked. Engines roared, the city fell away. But silence followed them up, heavy. Back at base, the air was colder, harder. She stood apart, helmet under her arm. The commander's words were clipped. Loss, report, debrief. She heard none of it. She heard only the echo of that boy's voice. Why'd you joke earlier? And her answer haunting, because silence makes people forget they're alive. But now, in the silence, she wished she'd said something else, something that mattered. She turned away, walked into the shadows of the hangar. And for the first time since she wore the uniform, she let herself cry. That was just one night, one mission. But it wasn't over, not for her. Because there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. And when they found out, everything would change. Why did she return to the hangar that night, when everyone else tried to forget? The base was quiet, too quiet. Most had collapsed into bunks, faces buried, grief pressed down by exhaustion. But she walked back, boots echoing against concrete. The hangar still smelled of fuel and blood, even though the floor had been scrubbed. The silence here wasn't peaceful, it was accusing. She stood where the helicopter had landed hours earlier. She could still see it, the way they'd carried him out, limp, his helmet slipping from his head. She hadn't looked then. She hadn't dared, but her memory was cruel. It replayed what her eyes refused to accept. And in that replay, he was always turning toward her, always asking the same question. Why'd you joke earlier? Her throat tightened. She didn't sleep. When dawn bled pale through the windows, she was still sitting there, back against cold steel, helmet beside her. Someone found her. The medic, a woman with tired eyes and hands that never stopped shaking, no matter how many wounds she stitched. You should eat, the medic said. I'm fine. You're not. Silence stretched between them. The medic finally sat down, rubbing her wrists. He asked about you, before. Her breath caught. What did he say? The medic's eyes flickered. He said you made it easier, the fear, the waiting. He liked that you didn't act like the rest of them. Her vision blurred. She pressed her palms hard against her knees, grounding herself. Sometimes, the medic whispered, the ones who laugh carry the heaviest things. She said nothing, she couldn't. Hours later, the briefing room buzzed again. A new mission, always a new mission. Faces grim, but eyes trying to hide the cracks. They stood straighter, talked louder, as though pretending could patch the hole left by one missing chair. She sat in silence, eyes forward. The commander's voice was sharp, measured, but she noticed the tiny pauses, the way his gaze brushed past the empty space. Even he felt it, but he wouldn't say it, couldn't. Halfway through, he looked at her, direct. Lieutenant, you fly again tonight. Her chest tightened, a pause too long, then, yes, sir. No one objected, but she felt the stares, felt the question burning in the air, should she? She didn't care. In the hours before sunset, she walked outside the wire, just far enough to smell the dry earth, to hear the wind scrape across broken ground. She needed space, needed to breathe air that wasn't heavy with memory. Her hand brushed against the small locket hidden under her uniform. She hadn't opened it in years. She didn't need to. She knew the picture inside by heart, a boy's face, younger than the soldier they'd lost last night, eyes like hers but brighter. Her brother, the reason she'd joined, the reason she stayed. He had died in a city like this one, not by bullet, by hunger, by neglect, by the slow violence of a world that looked away, and she had sworn no one else would be left unseen, no one else would vanish quietly. That vow carried her through every mission, every silence, every night she climbed back into the cockpit, even when she wanted nothing more than to run. But tonight, that vow felt heavier, because she hadn't saved him, not the boy in the picture, not the young soldier who laughed once at her joke. She clenched the locket in her fist until the edges cut her skin, then tucked it away. Duty first, always duty first. The flight that night was colder. The team boarded in silence, eyes down. One man's hands shook as he clipped his harness. Another muttered something under his breath, too low for anyone to hear. Human sounds, but brittle. She caught their eyes one by one through the cockpit mirror, didn't speak, just looked. It was enough. They needed steadiness, even if she had to fake it. Engines roared. The ground fell away. She guided them low, close to the earth. Shadows stretched long, hiding them. Her voice stayed calm over the comms, even as her pulse raced. She narrated altitude, speed, vector, steady, precise, like a metronome against chaos. But beneath it, her mind whispered, "What if it's you next? What if you bring them home broken again?" She gripped the controls tighter. The target was deeper this time, a compound layered in concrete and rust. Intel said hostages, locals taken for leverage. If true, it wasn't just a mission, it was redemption. As they closed in, she spotted movement below, shadows darting, dogs barking, a world waking up to their presence. She whispered into comms, 2 minutes out. The leader in the back, older, grizzled, with eyes that had seen too much, gave the signal. His voice was calm but heavy. "Copy. Make it clean, Lieutenant." She nodded, though he couldn't see it. The landing zone was chaos, too exposed. She set down fast, rotors slicing the night, dust rising in choking waves. The team spilled out, ghosts swallowed by the storm. She held position, hands steady, eyes scanning. Every shadow a threat, every flicker of movement a decision. Gunfire cracked, close. She forced herself not to flinch, not to imagine faces, just wait, just listen. Minutes dragged, then a scream, a woman's voice, not English, raw, terrified. Her chest tightened. She strained against the instinct to move, to abandon her post and run into the dark. But she couldn't. She was the spine of this mission. If she broke, they all did. So she sat, waiting, every second tearing at her. The team returned in fragments, shouts, stumbling figures. One carried a child, another a woman wrapped in a torn shawl, hostages, real, alive. Her heart leapt, then sank, because behind them more gunfire, more shouting, and not everyone was coming back. "Go," the leader barked, shoving the civilians up the ramp. "Go, go, go." She lifted, rotors clawing at the night. The helicopter swayed under weight and chaos. Voices screamed over headsets. She tuned them out. Focus, steady hands, eyes forward. Bullets traced the air around them. Sparks flared off metal. She adjusted altitude, weaving, dodging, trusting instinct more than instruments. And then silence, the city falling away beneath them, the desert opening wide. She exhaled long, shaky. Back at base, the hangar was alive with noise, medics rushing, children crying, soldiers shouting directions, a storm of sound. She sat in the cockpit long after the engines died, hands still gripping the controls, knuckles white. She couldn't let go, couldn't move. Finally, the grizzled leader appeared in the doorway. His eyes were tired, but softer than she'd ever seen them. "You did good tonight," he said. She didn't answer. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. They're alive because of you. Her throat burned, and the ones who are. Silence heavy, he had no answer. Finally he said, that's the part no one survives, not really. He left. She sat alone. The hangar lights flickered overhead. Outside, children cried for parents who might never come, and inside her the vow grew heavier. Because she knew this was only the beginning. And there was still something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Why did she dream of the boy's face when she had never let herself before? That night the base fell into uneasy sleep. Engines quiet, radios muted, but her body refused to rest. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling where shadows moved like ghosts. The boy's voice echoed, not her brother, not the soldiers, but a blend of both, asking her the same thing over and over. Why'd you joke earlier? She turned on her side, pressed her hands against her face. She could still smell the dust from the landing zone, still hear the child scream. Sleep didn't come, only memory did. When she finally drifted, it was not into rest. It was into fire. In the dream, she was 12 again, the air thick with heat. Her brother's hand in hers, too small, too fragile. They ran through streets that shook with distant thunder, not bombs, hunger, desperation. Shops shuttered, people clawing for scraps. Her brother stumbled, fell. She turned, pulled at him, but his eyes were already dim. She woke gasping. The bunk above creaked as someone shifted. Across the room, someone muttered in their sleep. A cough, a groan. Life fragile, always on the edge of breaking. She sat up, swung her feet to the floor. The clock glowed red. 03:17. She wouldn't sleep again. Before dawn, she walked the perimeter. Guards eyed her but said nothing. The desert stretched endless, pale under moonlight. Wind carried the faint scent of smoke from villages far away. She lit a cigarette, though she rarely smoked. The flame shook in her hands. She drew in harsh smoke, coughed once, then let it burn her throat. Something about the pain felt honest. Couldn't sleep either. The voice startled her. She turned. The medic. Same tired eyes, same restless hands tucked into pockets. She shrugged. Dreams. The medic nodded, understanding without pressing. You keep carrying them, she said softly. Every face, every loss. Don't let anyone tell you different. She didn't answer, just dropped the cigarette, crushed it under her boot. The medic tilted her head. You want to know what he said before he bled out? Her stomach turned. She hesitated, then nodded. The medic's voice was quiet but steady. He said, tell her she's right about the silence. It does kill. Her chest tightened. The medic walked on, leaving her in the wind, alone. Later that morning, the commander called her in. His office was bare, just maps and a single flag. He didn't waste words. You fly again tonight. Her stomach dropped, already. Intel says they'll move the rest of the hostages within 24 hours. We can't wait. She nodded stiff, yes, sir. But he didn't dismiss her. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. I need to know if you're steady, after last time. Her jaw tightened. I am. His gaze lingered, searching. Finally, he nodded. Good, because this one won't be simple. By evening, the team gathered again. Fewer now, each absence like a missing bone in the body. They stood quieter, shadows under their eyes. She strapped in, fingers moving by muscle memory. But inside, doubt coiled tight. Was she steady? Could she hold them together again? Or was she just pretending, waiting for the next name to carve itself into her? As they lifted off, the desert stretched below. Endless, empty. She felt the weight of every soul on board. And the one that was. The city came fast. Lights flickered like broken stars. Roads snaked into shadows. She guided them low, weaving between buildings that loomed like silent giants. The leader's voice crackled through comms. Target within 5 blocks. Minimal resistance expected. She almost laughed. Minimal. the kind of word commanders used when they didn't want to say unknown. Her eyes scanned the streets. Shapes moved in corners, too fast, too many. She whispered, eyes open, "This city isn't asleep." The landing zone was a rooftop this time. Narrow, cracked concrete. She hovered, careful, blades inches from ruin. The team dropped fast, sliding into darkness. She pulled up, circling low, watching, always watching. Minutes dragged, no shots yet, just whispers of movement. Then her headset crackled, urgent. Contact. Gunfire erupted, sharp, close. She tightened her grip, circling lower, heart hammering. Voices overlapped, shouts, screams, orders, chaos. Then silence, sudden, terrifying. "Status," she hissed into the mic. "Static." Her breath caught. "Status." Finally, the leader's voice strained. 2 down, 1 critical, hostages secured. Relief tangled with dread. Extraction. Now, before it collapses. She dropped fast, rotors slicing the night. The rooftop shook under weight as they dragged bodies aboard. She saw the critical one, blood soaking his vest, eyes wide with fear. He couldn't have been older than 20. Her chest ached, not him, not another boy. "Go," the leader barked. She lifted, weaving through gunfire. Tracers lit the night like angry stars. She dodged left, then right, instinct sharper than thought. Bullets sang off the hull. Her knuckles whitened, her jaw locked. She flew like the machine was part of her body, like her heart beat through its steel veins. Finally, silence. The city fell away. She exhaled, shaking. Back at base, chaos again. Medics swarming, shouts, blood everywhere. She sat frozen in the cockpit, watching as they pulled him out, the boy still alive. Barely. His eyes darted to hers, desperate, pleading. She looked away. She couldn't bear it. The grizzled leader climbed out, blood on his hands. He met her eyes, shook his head once. Her stomach hollowed. She closed her eyes. Another face, another weight. That night she didn't walk the perimeter, didn't smoke. She sat on her bunk, helmet in her lap, staring at the locket hidden under her shirt. She thought of her brother, of the soldier, of the boy, faces blurred together, merging into one life she could never save. Her chest hurt, her throat burned. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. Instead, she whispered to the empty room. Because silence makes people forget they're alive. Her own voice cracked. And for the first time, she wondered if she still believed it. But there was something she hadn't told them, not yet. Something buried deeper than her brother's death, deeper than the vow. And when it came to light, it would shatter more than just her. It would shatter them all. Why did the commander look at her that way, as if he already knew? The mess hall was full, yet empty. Soldiers filled tables, trays clattering, voices rising and falling, but none of it reached her. She sat alone at the end, hands folded, food untouched. Her uniform smelled of smoke, though she'd washed it. Her ears still rang with gunfire, though the room was quiet. The commander entered, heads lifted, backs straightened. He scanned the room, but his eyes landed on her, just for a moment, long enough to make her stomach twist. He moved on, but the glance lingered. She knew what it meant. He saw it, the cracks in her armor, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was watching, the way her silence was no longer calm but heavy. He knew. She left early, walked fast out into the open air. The desert wind bit at her skin, sharp and dry. She breathed it in, but it didn't clear her chest. Her boots carried her to the hangar as though pulled by instinct. The helicopter sat there, silent, dark, her machine, her cage. She climbed in alone, ran her fingers across the controls. She could almost hear its voice, the low hum, the trembling steel. In here she wasn't just herself, she was purpose, precision, a blade in the dark. But tonight even the cockpit felt fragile. Her reflection in the glass looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, tense jaw, a woman wearing too many ghosts. She pressed her forehead to the stick and whispered, "Why am I still here?" The answer didn't come. Later in the barracks, the medic found her again, carried a mug of coffee, steam curling, set it gently by her bed. "You look like you need this more than me." She managed a faint smile. "You always watch me." The medic shrugged. "We all watch each other. It's how we survive." Silence. The medic sat on the edge of the bed. Fingers twisted the hem of her sleeve. Finally, she spoke. "I lost my first patient when I was 19, a girl. She bled out before I could even try. For years I carried her face. Thought if I saved enough others, maybe it would stop haunting me." Her eyes softened. "It never does, but it gets quieter." The words sank deep. Not comfort exactly, but truth. She nodded slowly. "Quieter," she whispered. The next mission came faster than anyone expected. A convoy ambushed on the outskirts. Survivors pinned. Urgent call for extraction. She strapped in, helmet tight, fingers steady though her pulse raced. The grizzled leader joined her in the cockpit this time, crouched low. He didn't speak, just rested a hand briefly on the console, an unspoken trust. Engines roared, they lifted. Night swallowed them whole. The convoy site was chaos. Burning vehicles lit the road, black smoke clawing at the sky. Figures scrambled for cover, muzzle flashes cutting the dark. She dropped low, blade slicing through smoke. "We don't have time," she muttered. The leader nodded, in and out fast. The team poured out, sprinting through fire and dust. She hovered, eyes scanning every corner. Gunfire cracked. Bullets traced lines across metal. She adjusted, weaving, keeping the bird steady. Her headset filled with shouts, pain, orders, fear. Then a voice she didn't recognize, young, panicked. "We can't hold, we." The line cut. Her chest seized. She gripped the controls tighter, knuckles white. Every instinct screamed to land, to help, to fight. But she couldn't. She had to hold steady. Hold, always hold. When they returned, they carried more wounded than standing. Blood everywhere. The air thick with smoke and despair. As they lifted, a round struck the tail. The helicopter lurched hard. She fought it, muscles burning, sweat dripping down her neck. Metal groaned. Warning lights flared red. "Hold her together," the leader barked. "I'm trying," she hissed, voice raw. The machine bucked, shuddering in her grip. Every second stretched like a blade against her throat. If she lost it now, they all died. Her brother's face flashed. The boy, the soldiers, all of them, watching, waiting. She screamed, not in fear but fury, forced the machine to obey. Finally silence, level flight, the desert opening wide again. She exhaled, shaking, tears burning her eyes. Alive barely. Back at base, the hangar lights were blinding. Mechanics swarmed the bird, shouting about damage, about miracles. She stumbled out, legs weak, helmet in hand. The leader caught her arm, steadying her. His eyes burned with something fierce. Respect. "You saved them," he said. She shook her head. "Not all." His grip tightened. "Enough." For a moment, she wanted to believe him. That night, she finally opened the locket. Her brother's face stared back, young, smiling, frozen in time. She traced the photo with trembling fingers. Her throat burned. She whispered, "I'm still trying." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She let them fall, silent. Because she knew the truth now, she wasn't just fighting for him. She was fighting against the silence that had taken him. The silence of a world that let him vanish unseen. And that was the part she hadn't told them, not yet. That her war wasn't just theirs, it was hers, personal, unfinished. And it would cost her more than they could ever know. She closed the locket, slipped it back beneath her uniform, and waited for the next call. Why did the walls feel like they were closing in on her? The base was eerily quiet that morning. Only the hum of the generator and the occasional footstep echoing down the hall. She moved like a ghost, boots soft on the concrete. Her uniform felt heavier than ever, a second skin stitched with guilt and memory. The mission briefing was short, strike, secure, return. But the images on the screen, they were familiar, too familiar. Every street, every alleyway, every crumbling wall, they carried whispers of her past, her brother, the boy she had lost. The commander's voice cut through her haze. "We move in 2 hours, be ready." She nodded, but her stomach churned. Every fiber of her being screamed to stop. Not because of danger, because of the ghosts waiting for her inside. The helicopter lifted, carrying them across the desert. Dust rose in soft waves, glowing pink under the dawn. The team moved with practiced precision. Each soldier had their rhythm, their role. But she felt unmoored, like a piece of glass sliding across a table, never finding its place. Her headset crackled. "Lieutenant, eyes on the perimeter," the leader said. Her hands gripped the controls tighter than necessary. Her eyes scanned the ground below, mapping every detail. And there it was, a flash of movement. A child, or just her imagination. The memory hit her like a punch. 12 years old, smiling, wooden plane in hand, running across the courtyard before the smoke came, before silence fell. Her throat constricted, her chest felt hollow. Landing zone reached. They disembarked. The compound was larger up close, more menacing, walls scarred by previous skirmishes, windows shattered, iron gates twisted. The scent of metal and dust filled the air. The team moved in formation, every footstep a drumbeat in her chest, every shadow a reminder. "Check your sectors," the leader whispered. She hesitated. Something inside her screamed. She wanted to warn them, to say, "Don't go down that alley. It's a trap, I know." But she couldn't. Not yet. Inside, chaos erupted immediately. Gunfire rang off walls, splintering wood and concrete. She ducked behind a low wall, scanning for movement. Bullets tore through metal. Shouts pierced the air. And then she saw him. Not her brother, but the echo. A young boy, cornered, frightened, his eyes wide, lips trembling. She froze. The team advanced unaware. Her mind screamed at her, "Don't let it happen again." Her finger hovered near the trigger. Her heart hammered. Memories and present collided, a violent storm. A grenade rolled near the boy. She reacted without thinking, diving forward, dragging him to cover. The explosion threw dust and debris into the air. She coughed, mouth raw from smoke. The boy trembled, shaking violently. "You're safe now," she said, voice low, soft, almost a whisper of what she wanted to say to her brother. He looked up at her, eyes wide, full of confusion and trust. The team arrived seconds later. "Lieutenant, what the hell?" the leader barked. She straightened, dust coating her uniform. "He was in the line of fire. I saved him." The team hesitated, but she didn't wait. There wasn't time, not for debate, not for hesitation. They pressed on. Every corridor, every stairwell, every room memory haunted her steps. Faces from her past, echoes of screams she had tried to forget. Her hands shook, sweat dripping from her brow. She kept moving, kept pushing. Her secret pressed harder with every step. "I am here because of him, because I failed him once. I will not fail another child." But the team didn't know that. And they might never understand. Suddenly they were ambushed. Gunfire tore through the air. A soldier fell, another screamed. The leader shouted orders. She moved instinctively, precision and rage fueling her. Bullets grazed her shoulder, pain searing, but she didn't stop. Through the smoke and chaos she saw another child, cornered, frozen, just like before. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. She screamed at the team, "Cover me, get them out of here." They hesitated, confusion, but they followed instinct, opening fire, holding back the threat. She grabbed the child, pulled him to safety, heart racing, memories threatening to overwhelm her. And then she realized she couldn't keep this secret anymore. Later, after the smoke cleared, the team regrouped in a ruined courtyard. Her uniform was torn, blood streaked her face, hands trembling. She held the boy close, refusing to release him. The leader approached, eyes sharp, voice steady. "Lieutenant, we need answers now." Her chest burned. The locket beneath her uniform pressed against her heart. She took a deep breath. "It's him, my brother. He died here years ago. And I've been trying to save someone, anyone, to make up for it. That's why I'm here. That's why I keep pushing. That's why I risk everything." Silence. The boy she had saved clung to her leg. The team stared, absorbing the weight of her words. The medic stepped forward, eyes soft. "It makes sense. Now we know why you've been carrying so much." She shook her head, tears slipping down her face. "It doesn't make it easier." The leader finally spoke. "You're human, Lieutenant, that's all. And human doesn't mean weak. It means everything we fight for." The words hit her like rain on dry soil. Relief and sorrow mingled, heavy, sticky, impossible to separate. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel, fully, not just duty, not just anger, not just guilt, but grief and hope and love. The mission ended. They returned to base, battered but alive. She handed the boy over to the medics, watching him go with a weight lifting and settling at the same time. In the quiet of the hangar, she sat alone, locket in hand, whispered to her brother, to the boy she saved, to herself, "I'm still trying, and I will keep trying." Because some truths could no longer be buried. Some wounds could no longer be carried silently. And sometimes, the only way forward was to face the storm, open and trembling, and act anyway. The night was still. Desert winds whispered through the cracks in the walls. She stared at the stars, feeling the enormity of the universe pressing down, and for the first time, a small, fragile peace settled in her chest. Because she had survived, she had acted, and though the war outside raged, the war inside her had shifted ever so slightly, but enough to breathe again. Sometimes courage isn't loud. It doesn't roar. It whispers in the moment you keep moving, even when the memories try to stop you. Why did the desert feel so alive at night? The wind stirred, carrying whispers of past missions and ghosts she thought she'd left behind. Her boots crunched over the gravel as she walked alone, away from the base, away from the chatter. The team was resting, but she couldn't. Sleep felt like surrender, and surrender had a cost she refused to pay. The boy she saved earlier was safe in the medic's care, yet her mind kept replaying the moment she had carried him through chaos. The memory was a sharp edge, both comforting and painful. "I saved him, but I failed once, and I can't fail again." Her fingers brushed the locket under her uniform. She hadn't spoken about it to anyone else. Not the team, not the commander. It was hers, a tether to the brother she had lost, a reminder of why she kept moving forward. The briefing came at dawn. Maps spread across the table, markers indicating enemy positions, likely ambush points, extraction routes. The mission was simple in theory: infiltrate, secure intel, extract without detection. In reality, the compound was fortified, every approach risky, and intelligence scarce. The team sat around the table, eyes tired but sharp. They glanced at her, newly aware of the weight she carried, yet still depending on her skills. She took a deep breath and nodded. "We move in 20 minutes, she said, voice calm, betraying none of the fear and hope intertwined in her chest. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. She wondered, could courage alone protect them? Or was this mission already a test of who they truly were? The journey to the target site was quiet. The hum of the transport aircraft filled the void, punctuated only by the occasional radio check. The team's silence was different this time, respectful, cautious. They had seen her vulnerability, yet they trusted her judgment more than ever. Her thoughts wandered, faces from her past, decisions she hadn't yet reconciled. Every memory seemed to whisper, "You can't save everyone, but you can try." The aircraft descended, skimming the tree line, and the desert below spread like a canvas of muted gold and shadow. She studied the terrain, marking likely enemy positions in her mind. Every step would matter. Every decision could be fatal. Landing. She led the team off the aircraft with precision. The desert wind cut through their gear, but they moved methodically, as if the world had slowed down just for this moment. They approached the compound. Shadows clung to corners, every window a potential threat. She felt the weight of responsibility tighten around her shoulders like an invisible harness. Then she saw it movement in the distance. Not a boy this time, adults, armed, alert, and ready. Her pulse quickened, but she steadied her breathing. Fear is not weakness. Fear is information. She signaled the team, "Positions, cover me." The infiltration was tense. Silence was their ally. Every step echoed in the stillness of the night. Dust swirled around their boots, masking some sounds but not all. Inside, the compound smelled of old metal, smoke, and fear. They moved like shadows, passing rooms filled with whispers of lives interrupted by war. Each door they opened revealed more scattered belongings, traces of families long gone, evidence of lives disrupted. She couldn't look away. Each scene mirrored something personal, a lost childhood, a fleeting laugh, a hand left empty. It fueled her resolve. She pressed forward. Suddenly, gunfire erupted, sharp, brutal, instantaneous. The team hit the ground. Bullets tore through walls, splintered wood, shattered glass. Chaos. She reacted instantly, training overriding panic. Covering fire, calculated movements, and an instinct that refused to betray hesitation. She moved like a wraith, every decision measured, every breath purposeful. And then she saw him, a figure at the far end of the hall holding a briefcase, the intel they had come for, guarded, dangerous. Her heart pounded. She considered her options. Run, wait, distract. Every choice carried consequences. Time slowed. She moved, steps light, heart heavy. Memories and mission merged into a singular focus. She couldn't fail, not now, not after everything. The guard turned, eyes met. Recognition flickered, then surprise. She acted, quick, precise, and without hesitation. A movement, a throw, a suppression. The guard collapsed. She grabbed the briefcase, weight in her hands heavier than it seemed. The intel was theirs, but something didn't sit right. The team signaled. Extraction was near, but she hesitated. Why? Because she saw another child, hiding in a shadowed doorway, watching, trembling. Her chest constricted. Memories and present collided violently. Every instinct screamed at her to act. She made a choice. "Cover me," she shouted, voice sharp and commanding. The team responded, bullets suppressing the threat. She ran, sweeping the child into her arms. His small body trembled against hers. She whispered, "It's okay. I've got you." Moments stretched into eternity. Every sound, every echo, every heartbeat magnified. She could feel the child's fear as her own, but she pushed forward. Forward meant survival. Forward meant hope. The extraction point was just ahead. Dust clouds swirled, mingling with the smoke of distant gunfire. She ran, limbs burning, heart pounding. Behind her, the team provided cover, but she knew this moment was hers alone. Reaching the extraction, she handed the child over to medics waiting anxiously. Her uniform was torn, blood-streaked, dust coating her face. Her hands shook, but she breathed. She had survived. The mission was accomplished. The leader approached. "Lieutenant, that was beyond orders, that was courage." She shook her head. "It's not courage, it's necessity. I can't leave them behind." He studied her, eyes understanding. Sometimes necessity is courage, and sometimes courage defines who we are. She nodded, feeling the weight of those words settle into her bones. For years, she had measured herself against duty, against training, against loss. Now she understood. Courage was measured in the choices you made when no one was watching, when fear threatened to consume you, when hope seemed impossible. The flight back was silent, contemplative. The team sat, processing the mission. She stared out the window, watching the desert pass beneath her, endless, indifferent, beautiful. Her thoughts lingered on the children she had saved, the brother she had lost, and the countless lives affected by war. She felt exhaustion, relief, grief, and an unsteady spark of hope. Because she had acted, she had survived, she had saved lives, and though the world was still broken, she had made a difference. At the base, night fell. She stepped onto the landing pad, letting the wind sweep over her, letting the quiet embrace her. For the first time in years, she felt a fragile balance, a recognition of her own humanity. The locket beneath her uniform pressed against her heart. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I tried, and I'll keep trying." Sometimes survival isn't the goal. Sometimes it's about carrying the weight of your choices with dignity. Sometimes it's about acting when no one expects you to, and understanding that every act, no matter how small, matters. She looked up at the stars, silent, endless, and patient, and in that quiet she felt a promise not just to the lives she had touched but to herself. Because courage isn't loud. It doesn't demand recognition. It exists in the spaces between fear and action, grief and hope, failure and redemption. And tonight, under a sky that had witnessed everything, she allowed herself to breathe. Why did silence feel heavier than gunfire? She stood at the edge of the base, the night folding around her like a dark ocean. The wind carried a bitter scent of spent missions and distant smoke, yet there was a strange peace in it too, fragile, fleeting. Every mission left traces, invisible yet permanent. Tonight, the traces of this one pressed against her chest like an invisible weight she could not shrug off. The team had returned safely. The intel had been secured. The children for whom she had risked everything were under protection. Yet she felt no victory, not in the conventional sense. Survival was necessary, but it did not erase the memories of those she could not save, the ones who had vanished in shadows, swallowed by chaos before she could act. She traced her fingers over the locket at her throat. A small emblem, a picture faded by time. It was the brother she had lost, the anchor she had carried through years of service. She hadn't told anyone about him, not because she was ashamed, but because some grief was too raw to share. Morning arrived slowly. Sunlight fractured across the sand, washing the world in muted golds and harsh shadows. She walked the perimeter of the base, observing the team as they began the day with quiet rituals, tending gear, exchanging small smiles, checking equipment. Each face told a story. Fatigue and relief intertwined with unspoken memories of yesterday's mission. Her gaze lingered on one young recruit, nervous hands fumbling with his rifle. He reminded her of herself, years ago, anxious, determined, willing to fight, yet untested. She wanted to tell him that fear was not a flaw but a guide, that courage often existed in small, deliberate choices. But she remained silent, letting him discover it for himself. Because some lessons could not be taught, they had to be lived. Later in the debriefing tent, the room was thick with tension, relief, and unspoken exhaustion. She listened as the commander recounted the mission, noting successes, flaws, and areas for improvement. Her eyes drifted toward the child she had saved, sitting quietly in a corner, drawing pictures of her and the team in crayons that were too big for his small hands. She allowed herself a small, private smile, a fragile victory, a reminder that her actions mattered beyond the immediate battlefield. Yet the weight of the world did not lift. It had shifted, perhaps, but not disappeared. Every choice, every action, carried consequences she could not ignore. She felt proud, yes, but also broken in ways that no medal or commendation could repair. The afternoon sun burned overhead as she walked to the helipad, boots crunching on gravel, mind racing with fragments of past missions. Each memory arrived unbidden: a house destroyed, a civilian saved, a friend lost. The weight of responsibility was constant, relentless, unyielding. She paused. A gust of wind tugged at her hair, whispering through the metal structures, and in that moment she allowed herself to feel the depth of exhaustion and grief, to acknowledge that her resilience had a price. That strength was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act in spite of it. Her eyes drifted upward. The sky stretched endlessly, the sun fading into a haze of crimson and violet. For a brief moment, the world felt suspended, fragile, beautiful, and impossible to control. Night returned, quiet and patient. She found herself alone again, walking the perimeter, letting her mind sift through the events of the past hours. She replayed choices, some flawless, some mistakes, some acts of mercy that might have saved a life or condemned another. A soft sigh escaped her lips. She had always believed that control equaled safety, that precision equaled morality. But tonight she understood the truth. Life was chaos. Courage was not perfection. And morality existed not in the absence of action, but in the intention behind it. Her locket pressed against her chest. She touched it reverently, feeling the familiar weight, a connection to the past and to the person she had become. The team gathered later for a quiet meal, the clinking of utensils echoing softly in the tent. Conversations were subdued, punctuated by laughter that seemed to come from memory more than joy. They spoke of mundane things, food, weather, the next mission. But she listened more than she spoke, absorbing the humanity around her. For all the violence and chaos they had faced, these moments of ordinary life reminded her why she endured, why she risked herself, why she chose to act when no one else could. Because in the end, it was the small victories, saving a child, guiding a team, surviving a night of terror, that defined the measure of a life lived with intention. Later, she found a quiet corner under a dimly lit lamp. Papers and maps sprawled before her, remnants of the mission's planning. But she ignored them, instead closing her eyes and letting herself reflect. Memories of her brother surfaced. His laugh, the way he believed in her when no one else did. The moment she lost him, that loss had propelled her into this life of service, into missions that demanded everything from her. And tonight, she realized that grief, while heavy, had also shaped her courage, her compassion, and her resilience. Sometimes survival was not about the mission. Sometimes survival was about carrying loss without letting it define every action. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She stood at the edge of the compound, watching the first hints of dawn. The desert stretched endlessly, indifferent yet serene. She inhaled deeply, the wind carrying the scent of dust, smoke, and distant flowers. She felt a subtle peace settle in her chest, not because the world was safe, but because she had acted with intention, honor, and humanity. Her hand rested on the locket. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I tried, I'll keep trying, and that has to be enough." Because sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes morality is measured not in victories, but in choices. Sometimes the greatest strength is to act with compassion, even when the world does not notice. She turned away from the edge, walking back toward the base. The team followed silently, a tapestry of lives woven together by shared experiences, fear, hope, and resilience. The child she had saved waved from a distance, drawing a crude picture of her in bright colors. She smiled, letting a rare lightness touch her shoulders. The picture was imperfect, but it was real. And in that reality, she found a fragment of redemption. Night deepened once more, and she finally allowed herself to rest. Lying on the cot, she stared at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the base, distant voices, the hum of generators, the subtle creak of metal. Her mind replayed the mission one last time. Each decision, each act of courage, each instance of mercy. And she realized something profound. Survival alone was hollow. Meaning came from how one navigated the chaos. How one chose to act even when the odds were impossible, even when fear threatened to paralyze. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, and tonight she had acted. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of exhaustion and resolve wash over her. Somewhere in the desert, under the indifferent stars, the world continued. And she would continue too, carrying hope, bearing loss, choosing courage, one quiet act at a time. Because that was all any of them could do. And in that silence, that quiet pause before the world demanded action again, She felt a strange and lasting peace. The desert was vast. The night was infinite, but she was alive. She had acted, and for tonight that was enough.